Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Third Space Podcast, episode number 79, Dude Dad. It's been a while since our last episode, a few weeks. Sorry for the gap, but we have a good reason, a good excuse for that. Daniel, as you know from the last couple of episodes, was expecting a child. The child was born. Cosmo made it here safe and sound, although there was some story to go along with that. Daniel tells the story in this episode. So this episode is all about babies and fatherhood and medical stuff. I asked Daniel a bunch of questions about what it's like having an infant, how his life has changed, what's parenting like at this stage in life. Has he developed any cool systems of dealing with the baby? What are his thoughts on hospitals? And so we talk about that for a nice long time. It's a very fun conversation, and it kind of documents this important period in Daniel's life, his lived experience, as we would say in these modern times. So if that's the kind of thing you're into, then please give it a listen. Hope you enjoy.
Third Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast, Third Space Podcast.
Hello, the Third Space Podcast.
Yes, it is.
Back after hiatus.
Yeah. 6 or 7 weeks, man.
Yeah, well, not a lot happening in the world, in our lives. So we just, decided nothing happening, no podcast.
Yeah, you're right.
No, actually.
No, lots of stuff happened.
Do you
Cosmo
even...
was born.
Do you even remember what life was like before Cosmo was born? It's been a whirlwind ride, I'm sure.
Actually, I mean, there's some cliches that I could have acted out about how, like, you have a fundamental perspective shift and you're cracked open with a sense of awe. And I actually find this all to be true. But I'm not kidding when I say, like, no exaggeration whatsoever. I would say I've aged. I don't know physically, but I'll say physically. I feel like I really have aged about a year in the last 6 or 7 weeks. And I mean that through, like, whatever your scale of maturity is, I feel like it slows down as you get older, right? Like, you're maturing a lot from 16 to 17 and 17 to 18. You're very different. And it just slows as you get older.
Yes.
And so I would say at my current age, I have slowed down about a year, or I aged about a year's worth in maturity in 6 or 7 weeks. And that's really how I feel, which is crazy to pack that in. But it's not unheard of. It's not unbelievable. So.
No, I mean, in terms of maturity, yeah. I mean, having kids is one of the, like, life markers that, I mean, that's a marker of maturity. So that's not so
funny.
Surprising.
I like the term marker, and it's always been like, yeah, you have these moments, whether it's, going off to college or driving a car, or getting married or entering a serious relationship or whatever, these markers. But they're not just markers. Suggest, like, if your life were out, you can mark it as, like, there's a before and an after. But it's also like I guess more seriously, a transition, from the single to the married, or from I was a non-parent to a parent, from a dude to a dad. Now I'm a dad dude.
That's going to be, I think that's a good episode title, Dude Dad.
I don't know. I've always been annoyed by cliches, but cliches are rooted typically in sort of a wisdom, right? That becomes bumper sticker slogans.
Yep.
And then you're like, oh, what's true and what's not? And what if I am experiencing it, but I resist it because I want my experience to be unique and I want to have a unique angle on it. And so I'm trying to not resist it and just try to take in my experience. Yeah.
Live, laugh, love.
Well, look, okay, so how about this? I'm taking back, what is that thought experiment that says, okay, you're in a room and it's black and white and all you've ever seen is black and white, and you start studying the color red, you know all the dimensions, you know all the scientific, the ultraviolet spectrum, you really study the color red, and then you finally are introduced to a red apple or the color red. Yeah. What have you gained by experiencing it? And that's how I feel.
Qualia, that's the word, right? Yeah.
Yes, and that is I now have lived that experiment where I studied. I've always wanted to be a dad. I've read about it. I'm a
Now
reasonably smart.
you can use that phrase, lived experience, that everyone loves. It's one of my favorite phrases. I don't roll my eyes when I hear it. And now you have lived an experience, my friend, and you can say so, and you can claim
Yes.
whatever status you want by using
Such
that
a
phrase.
redundant thing to say, or like
Yeah,
it's a
it is
loaded
redundant.
term culturally. It's loaded is really what it is. It's saying you do not push back or do not ask, do not
Yeah.
challenge me.
You
in
haven't
this.
lived my
Yes.
experience. This is my lived experience.
Yeah.
So
And how dare you?
how dare you, sir?
Did I say lived experience then?
No,
by the
you
way?
didn't. You didn't, but you were close to it. You were about to say it, and so I jumped in for you.
Preemptively.
Yeah.
But having lived this experience, I've lived that Apple experiment now, and I think I take pride, and I think you do too, in adjusting expectations and having realistic views on things. Like
Right.
how much energy will this take? How exhausting will it be? What will it require of me? What are my actual expectations of outcome so that I don't have some outsized or underwhelmed? And so I'm pretty dang good at that, and I'm constantly being slightly surprised by life and amending my expectations, and that's fine. But that's what it means to live a good life, is to actually, I think, take in that feedback and adjust accordingly so that you have a finely tuned radar for expectations.
Sure.
So going into something
Well,
big,
that's what we've said many times. I don't know if we've said it on the podcast, but expectations are the key to happiness. Like setting your
Yes.
expectations appropriately, that's how you be happy. There's nothing else. Well, I won't say there's nothing else, but that is like the primary way to have peace of mind, is to set your expectations appropriately or low,
yes.
and then you're always a little bit happy.
It's funny you say that, like, and able to do that, to be able to do that, you have to, well, expectations are future oriented, what's going to happen in the future.
Yes.
And we had this cognitive psychologist come visit us in December, like literally the last day before break, which was bad timing. And this was to the school.
At school,
and did
not
something
personally, not just
personally.
showed up to your home.
No,
Hey.
came and talked to us about teenagers and their learning habits, basically.
Sure.
But yeah, just, hey, I'm a cognitive psychologist. Mind if I
Oh,
talk to
just
you about
stopping by.
executive functioning and what that means? But they said something interesting, and I won't remember the numbers, but I remember the general trend is our ability to conceptualize the future is very limited when you're young, and it expands as you get older.
Yeah.
And so, and the thing is, like, conceptually, a ninth grade student I can say, hey, a paper is due 2 months from now, and they can understand intellectually what that date means, but their ability to realize that future extends no more than 2 weeks. So if I let them know, this is on average, and that rings very true to me if I'm taking the average student and I say, hey, a paper is due, because I usually give deadline, or when I introduce a novel we're going to cover and it's going to take 6 weeks to read, I'll go ahead and say, and you know this is coming, but let's not worry about the due date now, but there's going to be an essay afterwards, so be thinking about these topics.
Yeah.
And then when we get about 3 or 4 weeks out, or I'll start to refine it, and then I'll give them a due date around 3 weeks. But really, it should probably be 2, because they're not taking action to often 3 days beforehand, let's be honest, or night of kind of thing. The way I stagger it, they can't wait till night of because there's drafts and things due. But this 2-week ability to start making plans and actually feel any sense of urgency for the future, and that extends. And adults, the average adult, it extends to only about 2 months.
So how does that time horizon of expectation affect happiness, or does it? Is that where you were kind of aiming?
I kind of was, and I'm glad you kind of brought me back, because I'm like, where was I going with this? Oh no, I don't know what to do with this information.
Because it seems like, just thinking about it, that kids are happy, right? Like they have a lot of, maybe they're volatile, but genuinely they have a lot of energy and are happy, and so does a
Yes.
shorter time horizon.
Well, and especially people with ADHD or learning differences or whatever are really bad at conceptualizing how much time it will take to complete tasks. And if they're very smart and capable, because it doesn't seem to affect intelligence. And we could debate the merits of ADHD and how if it's overdiagnosed and all that. But for a second, let's just say, like, they'll be like, oh, I have 2 weeks to do this. I can accomplish this in it really only takes, say, 9 hours to write a really good essay, and that's from top to bottom. So I can probably, and I know that I can't sit down for 9 hours and write an essay. So I need 2 days, and I can easily do this. And then they wait and distract and wait and distract until they're happy until they're panicking. They delay, and then they feel an impending sense of doom, and so they're stressed. And then when they're stressed, they soothe poorly with bad coping mechanisms, and so all of that just sucks. And teenagers, this applies not to just people with ADHD, but teenagers are bad about procrastinating. Actually, all human beings are, but we just get better, I'd say, mostly at limiting procrastination, and that all comes with expectation management. And I can realistically assess how long this will take, what my future self is going to feel like, how can I treat my future self better, all of that. And that's why.
Do you think you've gotten better at that now, or were you saying that even though you consider yourself to be quite skilled at that, having Cosmo upset your expectations, even though you supposedly are good at that?
This is an unsatisfying answer that I guess I'm still processing, but
that's fair.
My answer is going
He's
to
only
be
how old is he? Like a year, 2 years old, 7 weeks old.
7 weeks old.
That's right.
Sunday will be 8 weeks, so he's right at.
Oh, you're gonna have a party?
Weeks.
Give him a cake. Put
an 8-week cake. It is a 2 month.
1/6 of a candle in it or something.
I feel both that it has lived up to expectations in terms of everyone tells you you're not going to get any sleep, you're going to feel delusional, you're going to survive, do whatever you can to survive, and then also the opportunity to come up with some degree of systems, whether it's a bottle feeding, cleaning, how to change the diaper, just lots of opportunity for systems. Yeah. So all of this has been within the wheelhouse of yes, this is what I expected, and knowing he's going to cry sometimes, and no matter what you're going to do to soothe him, it won't work, but that's very normal. But so yes, my expectations were both spot on, and the experience is much more dramatic or daunting.
It takes a long time to experience it all. It's easier said than done. That's a pretty good phrase.
Yeah,
I just came up with on the fly.
Yeah, it's easier articulated than accomplished.
Oh,
I think mostly it's if someone just if someone said, hey, we're going to go on a trip and we did this for Japan, we amended our sleep schedule. Mm-hmm. That wasn't that bad because we were amending it, but also sleeping for long swaths of time. It's just that if you're not getting more than 3 hours of sleep, man, at a time, it's horrible, and you start to get mad, and then you have to practice some sort of kindness or go, this is just what it is. It's not going to last forever.
Right.
But they're just. Sleep deprivation is something you can conceptualize, but when you're experiencing it, it's just okay, all these symptoms are within my conceptualization, but that doesn't mean it's not powerfully,
right.
It's just powerful. It's but the experience is so different. Seeing the color red really did give me something. So, yeah.
You mentioned systems. This is one of the questions that I wanted to ask you about, because you're a very system-oriented person. You have a bullshit basket when you walk in the door, and you put your stuff in it. You put your shoes in a spot. There's a way to wash the dishes. There's a system for everything. You and I are similar in this regard. We both build habits so that we don't have to use our cognitive energy on those actions. We can just do it, right? It's automatic.
Yes.
Habitual. So I want to know about, you don't have to tell me about the boring common systems that you read in a book or something, but do you have any interesting or unique systems, or systems that you tried that failed miserably, or that worked way better than you expected? Anything like that?
Any
nuggets of wisdom that you can offer to our huge audience. Everyone is having babies out there, and you are going to be you're an expert parent, and you're offering these just golden nuggets of wisdom to people.
Okay, well, one of those that came to mind was I think systems start with philosophy. Like it can't just be run smooth mechanically. Like the reason things have their spot aren't just because we live in a physical existence. It's not arbitrary. It's like it's how do we behave in a space. But how do we behave in a space has guiding like ideas. Why do I behave this way in a space? So I thought, for instance, changing a diaper, I mistakenly said this is a very physical thing. There's probably not a lot of guiding philosophy behind changing a diaper. It's like I will learn the mechanics, and there are some. I'll give you a little bit. Like when you remove we bought some pee pads for like doggy pee pads to put on the thing because he's he when you're exposed to open air, babies frequently pee, and if you're a boy and you've got a wiener, a penis,
are you gonna get really? I guess I have to get used to you saying really stupid words from now on.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I've been saying penis. It's weird to be like his dick flopping out or something, but
Cosmo cock.
Cosmo cock. I actually have been using penis. I said wee just to be funny here. I don't actually use that term at all. But like, it'll flop around and he'll pee everywhere frequently when air hits him.
Right.
So there.
There
are some logistical things.
System idea: get a can of compressed air. Right, and right before you go to change his diaper, spray it down, like pull open the waistband a little bit, and spray the
cold air,
compressed air down there. Get him to pee. Go ahead and empty it all out before you take the diaper off. Boom, system.
There are some methods where you take a cold wipe and put it around his above his I guess just his waist area, and let some air get in there, and then he will just pee. Or you can just open it up and close it up.
There you go.
This is something I don't mean to share too much about Cosmo, but it's actually just normal for all babies. I didn't know like baby boys' penises get hard a lot, and like
what really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I don't remember that from when I was a baby. Maybe I had baby erectile dysfunction.
Bed. It's an indication that he's gonna pee frequently. So it's hilarious. Like I said, you start to take the diaper off and fling. And then he's peeing everywhere and all.
Little baby boner.
So we actually were gifted some reusable diapers that are like made almost out of a swim trunk type material, and then they have like a spot where you can some ultra absorbent like pads that you buy, and you can just and then like you can actually wash. Yeah,
Swiffer
so
pads.
it's an interesting, but they're too big for him. They were made for like maybe like 6-month-olds or something like that. So I like unroll them, put them on his belly, across his belly, almost like a blanket, and then if he starts to pee, I can just pull down the blanket and cover him up. But that's the physical symptom, I think, or system. I think that the philosophy of diaper changing is something like this. So I was late to this podcast today, and the reason being, I think it's like, okay, if you're the last in the restroom or in the bathroom and you use the toilet paper up, your job is to leave the bathroom as clean as when you came in. I think that's just like the
Boy Scout rule.
Obvious. Yeah. You wipe things down. You replace the toilet paper if it needs it. You spray if necessary. I mean, depending, and leave it the way. So. With Danielle and I, like we will often take shifts, whether it's like, hey, I'm gonna go work out, hey, I'm gonna go do this, hey, I'm gonna get some grading done, whatever it is. And so she was working out and her shift was coming to an end. He had this is another. So the art of changing diapers is not in the mechanics, but in the act of knowing when to do it. And that's not something I would have predicted. And what I mean by this is, you would think, there are these all diapers seem to have this system that's yellow. They're yellow, and then when water or pee hits it, it turns blue. So they have a wet diaper. But interesting, even though his poops are like very wet right now because he's just feeding on milk, like you would think his poops would make it turn blue. His poops are not very smelly yet, by the way, because it's just milk. So it's not like you can go, oh, he has a stinky diaper.
Yeah.
So if he has pooped but not peed, you wouldn't really know unless you peek. And he's frequently sharding.
Yeah.
And so the question is, if he has a teeny tiny shart right after you've changed him,
then he
to what
cries.
degree? And if he's crying, you change him. Maybe if he's not, whatever. So he had I checked and saw he had a teeny tiny shart. When I checked, he went bing, And so you're like, he's going to pee any second now. And then he calmed down. And honestly, this is where systems come in too, is like, because you're tired and because you're constantly doing the same things, you lose a sense of, when did I last to feed him? And I know it sounds strange to go like, dude, you can make a mental note of it's 1:30. He feeds every 2 hours. Just remember 1:30, but you cannot remember. You have to, there's apps and stuff. So you just click a button. It's like, I fed him now, because it is very difficult to know when. So anyway, like, I might forget, did I change him? And I'm surprised at that. I think that's the sleep deprivation. I think that's engaging in the same thing, like having no delineation in your day where you're just kind of doing these
Definitely
things.
sounds
and
like
you're
that.
And so I'll be like, so within moments, like, he had settled back down, had recently sharded, had not peed yet. She comes out to transition, and I hand him over, and then he starts crying. So I'm the guy who's left the bathroom with pee on the lid and not changed the toilet paper.
He set you up. Like,
yeah, I blame Cosmo for that one.
oh gosh.
And so I hand him over, and then he's crying, and I'm feeling a little like, oh yeah, the podcast, got to get in there and do this, and then I'm like, well, but, and so then I went back and I said, oh yeah, he has a dirty diaper. And the second I saw the look on her face, like, what have you violated this unspoken rule, which, like, I believe in making unspoken rules spoken, and so does she. So, like, after this, I'll actually say, hey, like, let's just make that, like I violated the rule. That was my bad. Like, I did correct it, by the way. I said, you know what? I'm going to change him, because it is crappy to hand him over and say, like, deal with all of this. And so you should ideally hand off Cosmo cool, calm, and collected and dry and all of that.
Right.
That won't always happen. Like, if he's been like crying for like 20 or 30 minutes and he's just in one of his inconsolable stages, which is not that often.
Yeah.
But like, if you're feeling mentally taxed, like, I just want to hand him off, like, that's fair. But
does he like you or Danielle better?
He is still. You can look at like what a baby's vision is at 8 weeks and see how blurry it is.
Don't
like,
tell me he doesn't know you apart. He knows you.
Oh, he
apart.
definitely does.
Okay.
He definitely does. But I just mean that he is not at a stage where I go, "Hey, Cosmo," and he just like shoots over and looks at you.
You gotta get him some
anything like that.
glasses,
He's
baby
not-
glasses.
So he's starting to turn smiley, and what I mean is, like, we're in between, like, what is gas and what is, like, we're not at the stage where I do something silly and then he smiles or laughs, but
he's too dumb for that.
he will look at you and then just start smiling. And so this funny moment happened, and they seem to be sort of arbitrary, or maybe, whatever. It's like maybe he focuses for a moment, because his attention span's probably like 30 seconds or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so he was smiling at me, and I go, come get a picture, because like he's laying on the floor. There's like things like tummy time, or you're playing, there's different things you do with a baby. So we're like doing this stuff, and he's smiling at me, and then she comes and gets close, and he notices her because of the movement, and he looks over at her, and the smile instantly like turned to like his normal expression, which tends to look like terror, by the way.
Oh.
It's not just, it's more like he has wide open, curious eyes. But imagine you have learned nothing about physical expressions, and and you can't really read. So it just looks sort of like very like mouth agape and eyes are wide and a little bit scared. Is how we would
I think I know
interpret
the face you're talking about. I think I know.
Yeah, and shaking just a little.
Yeah.
And then he went back to looking at me, and his smile came right back.
Oh, so we have some early evidence.
That's what Danielle said. She was actually like, "That sucks. He likes you more." And we were joking, but it also like kind of ticked her off a little bit. But also, he's done the same. Like he was very calm. She handed him off to me, and he started crying. Like, yeah. So, funny question, but it's just funny because that happened yesterday. I think the smiling thing was just very funny.
What was his first word? So you've had this experience thus far, 7 weeks with Cosmo. Like, can you imagine, or I guess, how much more difficult would it be if you had twins instead? Like, would it be twice as difficult, or would there be some like a reduction?
Exponential factor or reduction.
Yeah.
I think what would be tough is if they're on the same schedule. I think it's the not aligned schedules that would be the tough part. So because there are these moments when he is down, and it's getting better because he's getting a little more consistent. I'm getting a little better at predicting, oh, he's down for like 2 hours plus. And when those moments happen, it is peaceful. You get stuff done. We can take a nap. It's weird because you'll be so tired, but yet you underestimate, or maybe when I was estimating all of this, I was like, oh, when he sleeps, that's a common bumper slogan sticker thing. Like when the baby sleeps, you sleep. That's what you say.
When the baby is happy, mama is happy. Something like that.
Something like that. But the point is actually when he's asleep,
Sleep like a baby.
Like, I have things to do. I need to like take care of a lot of the chaos. But also I just want to get on my phone or do whatever it is that the pleasure moments where you read an article or play a game or zone out and do this. And so you'll be like very tired and you're forced to choosing sleep, which seems like the obvious one. But if you've gone a long time without just like doing that thing you do that's joyful and silly and a time waster, like I don't think all time wasters are purely a waste of time. Like they're just like mental comforts, and they're nice little escapisms and stuff. So that's the thing, is like I recognize that I had control of my moments of escape, and now I kind of like desperately want them sometimes, and I can't escape. That word sounds so terrible, but I just no, mean, reprieve from the day. So yeah. And
so that would be, if the twins had the same schedule, it might not be that different, but surely, I mean, I don't know anything about this, but surely twins don't get on like alternate schedules and the parents like allow it, or if one twin, like you just better get on the same schedule, because we're not doing something every hour. We're doing it every 2 hours.
That's one thing. That's one surprise about all of this. Like babies do not typically have any response to any like attempts at putting them on a schedule. Does not happen until about 12 weeks. So it's just like you're responding, and that's tough because usually I'm an active agent in my life, and I want something to admit. I want him to, for instance, sleep longer at night than during the day. So it's like, okay, we'll just make sure he doesn't nap as much during the day. We'll do more active things, and after an hour of napping, I'll like go to change his diaper and like make sure these, like I'll just orient myself, and he will respond. But it's not that doesn't work as much. Like you'd be surprised his resistance to sleep. Like you're changing the diaper, and if he's asleep or something, he's just like a lump on a log, like he's not waking up, and you're like, oh man, he is so sleepy. Or when he's asleep or awake in the middle of the night, like you don't have much choice about that, And then when you get so tired, then he is sleeping during the day, and it's a little over the time you want him. You're like, who cares? Like just let him sleep, kind of thing. So so you compromise some of your values through exhaustion. So I can see someone who doesn't have an internal sense of self, like because I'm compromising more than I thought I would, and I'm not someone who tends to do that. I tend to like stick to my systems. When you're tired, or your values start to get all out of whack, because you're like, now my values have shifted to I need sleep, or I need some self-care, or whatever you want to call it. And that starts to become more like we've talked about those what do we call it, like a mental tax or whatever, like activation energy or whatever it is to start things. We're trying to systems are designed to relieve cognitive load.
Yes.
But like if you're in red and you're on empty and he's sleeping, you're like, I don't care about my system. He's asleep.
Right. Do you think that phenomenon will get easier or harder as he gets older, as he gets 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 5 years old, 13 years old, so on? I
suspect it'll be much easier.
You think so?
For different things, because the second you take away, or I guess it's depends on the person. My weakness is not lack of sleep. That is like a core necessity for me to operate and do all the things. Like I don't want to read books. I don't want to clean the house. I don't want to be productive. I don't want to be kind. Like all my philosophy comes crashing down with lack of sleep. Yeah. You give me sleep, and it restores. It is like my core of what I need. Haven't
written much poetry lately. Just Third Eye Blind album is like not been played.
Yeah. No, I've been an a-hole. I've been nothing but
cheese,
horrible.
Just cheese is moldy in the fridge.
Yeah, there's no sense of Daniel. I am not who I just no, but like once I get more regular with sleep, I'm enabled to do all the things. Though I think it'll just be different types of challenges. Ones of like, because my will is more compromised when I'm tired. So once I get sleep, I will have a stronger sense of will and then adherence to those systems. So yeah. So I think for me it will be easier. I wouldn't do that as a blanket statement for everyone, but that is because that's the most compromised thing about parenthood right now. That's the biggest shift is I'm not sleeping. So yeah.
So I guess there
Can
are
I say,
some.
I want to
Yeah.
end the twin thing. I wanted to wrap that up. Is like is because you don't have any sense of schedule, and I do not think twins, despite like their DNA and all of that, like I think you're just gonna have, I can't imagine that would be the most difficult. They're on different sleep schedules. Hopefully they end up sort of orienting themselves similarly.
I mean,
but
surely they would, right? It just seems like
I don't know.
Not because of magic twin energy or anything like that. Just because like every incentive is for the parents not to indulge.
Yes.
One and not
you're
the
right.
other.
Like one's gonna go hungry for a session, but that's
Right.
okay because then they'll be like caught up the next session
Yes.
or
Yeah,
whatever.
right. That's
so
kinda what I
think
mean.
maybe it's even tougher than when you take someone like David and Brittany who like have a 4-year-old and a newborn kind of thing, and you're like those are not gonna have the same schedules like
Right.
fundamentally, and so.
But the
That
4-year-old,
could
you
be
can
very
tell
tough.
to like chill and like
Yeah, or
they're
go-
starting to become a human being.
Go play in the yard or something,
Right.
Like,
But a
there's some
baby-
independence there.
Yeah, a baby's not there. A baby's just like a weird living contraption,
yeah.
with obscure rules that you can't really figure out, and that's kind of the process until
Yeah,
they become
something-
a human.
Deeply unknowable yet so intimate. Like that's
Right.
what's so interesting. And you're like, and because it's not like all of a sudden Cosmo will be a human. Like you're just seeing these emerging moments of humanity. Like,
Right.
that's a smile that isn't
smile,
gas related. Wow. Or even the eye contact, for instance.
Right.
Or like from week 1 to 3, where it's like, wait, that's real eye contact. That's not just gazing in my direction.
Yeah.
Or like he was crying and I would go and like
And he
kiss his
stopped.
stomach and stuff, and he stopped crying and was just looking at me again with that horror-stricken face. But I think
Right.
horror is his standard. so like the fact that he stopped, he might have really liked it. I think it'll turn into laughter and joy.
Sure,
He doesn't
yeah.
know- like, he's not expressing those. He's just stopping and like looking and stuff. So those are like that thrill is rich. Now I anticipated it being rich and rewarding, so
Right.
I can't.
So
but
you're a little
yeah.
unhappy because your expectations, you didn't underestimate your expectations. So
Well, it's
you expected it to be gratifying, and it kind of is.
And
It's exhausting
definitely-
though, so actually you're a little unhappy with the whole situation.
no. It is very gratifying, and again, it's the experiential like I don't know, joy. I mean, it's why we like travel. It's like it's kind of a weird thing to examine. It's like, okay, we went to Japan and like you did all of this work, and like while we're eating, it's like, is this if I were to say something like, is this as precisely as joyful as you?
Yeah,
you
right.
experience?
While I'm
And you'd be
eating
like, I mean,
a whole
Yeah.
fish with head and eyes and everything.
and you're like,
Is this as good as you thought it would be, Bennett? Is this as good?
Yeah, right. It's kind of just like I think that this where we could get in the territory of overthinking, like we're trying to process instead of experience, and I think actually the things happen kind of mysteriously, like simultaneously, experiencing and processing are happening, but I think we should emphasize experience at some points and emphasize process and reflection and stuff at some points, and so. That actually is kind of big for me to say out loud. I don't know if I've ever put it that way. Is that like if I'm getting out there and the second he smiles and I start going, is this bringing me joy? Like
Right.
that's a very weird way to live your life. It's like you
Yeah.
need to just need to have the joy, and then later you can reflect on all that smile, and you're writing a poem about it to kind of reclaim some sense of joy, or I don't know.
Yeah.
But the point is like we should delineate between the reflection of experiences and the experiences themselves. Like experiences should be a little more raw and I don't know if primitive is the right word, but just like you should allow, like to some degree, allow that to wash over you. Have the experience. Don't try to. It's the same as like taking photos of your food versus just like just eat it and enjoy yourself. Like be in the moment.
Right. I have another question. So I guess like in terms of parenthood decisions, like the first one you made was, do we have a kid, right? And so you made that
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah.
And then while Cosmo's an infant, I can't think of any real question. All the questions are kind of more about you than about him. It's kind of like, oh, how do I deal with the lack of sleep, or how do we deal with systems? But what's the next like parenting question that you have to prepare for in terms of philosophy? Is it
Yeah.
really like disciplining a toddler, or how do I deal with tantrums? Like, it seems to me, maybe I don't know, but when they're an infant, there's actually not that much to consider. You just do what you got to do. You change the diaper, you put them in the crib, give them a nap, you feed them or whatever, and they're not really humans, so there's nothing else that you have to do. But the more they start to become human, the more you have to actually take a particular behavioral path through parenthood. So, like, what's the next decision that you're
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
anticipating?
Well, it's funny you say that. You're right. All right. I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth for a second. They say you cannot, like, they have no self soothing skills, so you cannot overly baby them.
Right,
But
right.
you can overly check on babies. If he is
Mm-hmm.
just doing what you would call active sleep, where he cries and then you pick him up quickly and he wakes up, or he learns as he's learning the process of I'm crying. This is what I haven't said this out loud, so it's gonna be tough. But if he cries and every time we meet his need immediately, at some point, like, that does become a dependency. So it's not like there's one day he's not doesn't have any self-soothing skills and one day he has that potential for it. And like, there's this
Yeah.
emerging. And so I try to, so with that in mind, for instance, I want him to be comfortable in public or like out at restaurants. I want to be able to travel with him in a car or take
Right.
him on walks. And so it would be foolish to say that, like, oh, I'm getting him ready for, like, or that like, he has no memory. We did take him to a restaurant with my parents, and it was allowed. He doesn't seem sensitive to sounds. There's a good one. Like, he doesn't seem. His hearing.
Yeah.
He passed all the tests. He definitely can hear. But like during the day, I would have him. If Danielle were not here, and I wanted to do this podcast, I would not lower my voice at all, and he'd sleep
Yeah.
right here next to me, and this would not be affecting him.
Right.
Or like if I want to listen to music during the day, and like, or I'm washing the dishes, I don't like try to do the water on low, and I'm like, we don't whisper whatsoever, and
Yeah.
hopefully that these so that's exactly what I mean. Is like, it's not really a moral thing, it's just a lifestyle thing of, let's get him out, let's go to a park, let's go on daily walks, let's move a lot, let's not make his surroundings actually quiet and gentle and soft. Let's actually allow, and some of that, like apartment living, that's just unfortunate, where you have like cars that are a
Yeah.
little bit loud, or an upstairs neighbor that's a little bit loud, or the bus or that comes through with its like loud hydraulics and backing up, beep beep,
Yeah, yeah.
and all of that. Like, we just have a lot more noise than I think you would in a typical quiet suburban neighborhood. And I actually am thankful for those moments of natural. We have some kids that are actually really good kids, but they're still kids, and it's summer now, and so they're playing out by this playground near us. And what do kids do when like 5 to 9-year-olds
shout
are
and
playing?
scream.
They're shouting and doing their thing, which like, and it doesn't seem to bother him. And I'm hoping that sort of upbringing, like, he'll just be kind of just not that sensitive
Right.
to that. And that's another, like, I
So
guess a little
you're
bit.
kind of taking the exposure tack, right? Like, expose
Yeah.
him to things, and I mean, which I think is, generally speaking, a good way to do things, right? So you're like
Yeah.
rubbing dirt on him and stuff.
Yeah, but definitely not rubbing dirt on him. But I am like, yeah, like I don't want to, when I'm taking him on a walk, like, look, if it's a 95 degrees, I'm not gonna go on a walk. But if it's 82 and a little sticky, I'm going on a walk with him. And like, if he's a little bit hot, like, as long as he's not overheating,
Sure.
I want some degree of discomfort, like, because I see parenthood as teaching him how to
Handle discomfort,
manage
yeah.
the discomfort in life, and like, that's a big picture goal I have. I'll tell you the one weird thing I'm very weird about screens, and like that's I've told you we've talked about this technology and all this, but I know there's a difference between like social media apps and that sort of soul corruptive tendency, and then it's just pure screens. Like screen time is
slippery
a different
slope
beast,
there.
right?
Yeah.
But it is a slippery slope, and I'm literally so we're in this weird stage where like you've said, there's something just blob-like about him, and he's not sensitive to sound. So what do you do when he's asleep? We can put him with the baby monitor in the bassinet in the bedroom, and then we can just do our thing out in the open. Or sometimes he just like might fall asleep next to us or on the couch or in our arms, and then we just set him right there. So let's say that's happened. Like we're eating dinner and he's asleep, and we want to watch Everybody Loves Raymond. So and I have no issue like with the sounds of Everybody Loves Raymond. Like they might yell, like Deborah might be like, "You idiot" to Ray or something like that, or they're fighting, or Robert's "Everybody stop" or whatever.
That's a good
like
Robert.
so there's and like there is yelling, but still there's something like that show. In terms of audio, is like a warm hug. But we're also watching a horror series called Midnight Mass that's really well done, and like, and I've told Danielle I'm a little this is the weird thing though that I do is like I position big pillows where you can't even see the screen every time, and he's like asleep and like can't see that far, but like I know I'm overdoing it, and I've told her, but I'm like, I just want that to be so ingrained in us that he doesn't see screens. I want to be like sensitive to the idea.
Try to keep him from seeing any screen until he's like 7 or 8 years old, and then do like a screen reveal, like boom, and he'll be like, and he'll be like poking at the screen. How are these little people in this box? Kind of like that.
Well, you laugh, but I'm priming myself to be sensitive more than I'm actually thinking it's affecting him at this age. I want to like be so like, oh, there's a screen and there's Cosmo, and like I want that to alert me and be consciously making a decision about that. So that's why I'm training myself this way. The question I had, like Danielle and I decided, because as his alertness, he's becoming more and more alert. These sounds are, you watch a horror thing, you can imagine they're very concerning. The music, the jump scares, the screaming, the agony of like gore or something like that. And it's like, even if he's asleep and doesn't seem responsive, I do believe, this might sound a little hippie, but I believe he won't remember, but I believe he can still feel.
It's the
believe
vibes,
he can still,
man. The vibes.
Well,
he's gonna get those horror vibes.
The energy that he absorbs in his body.
His aura is gonna turn.
The physical
dark,
body can remember.
Dark
the
purple
body will
aura.
internalize.
Yeah, with yellow sparkles. Ooh, the worst.
No, I don't think. I think more like he would just feel a little anxious because those notes are designed to do that, and I don't know. So when we're watching something like Everybody Loves Raymond, I make sure you can't see the screen. But if it's a horror thing, and let's say like last night was a weird one where we had agreed, okay, when we're watching horror or intense adult things, we will put him away. But last night was an example of like, all right, well, he's asleep and I don't want to like move him. Like there is risk in moving him, whether that's gonna wake him up. So we just watched it at a little bit lower volume, and not because of the sounds of waking him up, but more just like this is disturbing stuff that I don't like.
Yeah.
Kind of weird, right? What do you think? I know we're probably being silly, but
it is
like
a little silly at this point, I think. But like, you're teaching yourself the pattern that you'll stick to. When it isn't silly anymore. And
there won't be a clear day that it's but there won't be a clear day from silly to not silly.
You're right.
So
yeah,
might
that line is very blurry, and so you might as well. I mean, there are a lot of things like this, right, where we can't establish a clear line, and so if you have to err, then you err on the conservative side and make sure that you're safe. So yeah, I don't think I'm not laughing at you.
I'm training myself with the screen stuff because like it's the one thing that I would say like I feel like I'm doing that's a little strange, or you could argue is just a little like intense. Like I don't even think like why are screens, just physical screens, bad? I mean the attention draw is like so powerful, and I don't want the screen to be more appealing than the natural curiosities of life around us. So that's why I'm kind of that's that. Like I don't want, when I'm teaching him ABCs, I'm not going to download the Psychologist #1 recommended app that plays and does all the here are rewards and all the flashy. Like I don't want that. I want learning is unsexy and
think
boring,
one
and I
of,
want it to
right.
remain that way. Like,
Yes,
yeah.
I think one of the greatest lessons that we can learn is how to be bored or how to deal with boredom. And that's very important. Like how to learn to think. When there's nothing going on and you're sitting in a chair in a waiting room, like how to cope with that experience.
Yes, that's what
Very important.
attention isn't just like we shouldn't hand that over to whatever the flashy thing is, and
Yeah.
that's being bored, or like if you're given an assignment in school or at work or whatever, you have to focus on that, and to be able to do that even when your mind starts to wander, or to be able to. And boredom also, like, out of that, existential questions arise, like, I don't like where I'm at, let me make some changes. Like,
Yeah, definitely. Like
boredom is so useful.
I,
Creativity it comes out of boredom. Like, how do I solve this? Boredom. Like, do something interesting.
I often, pretty often now have to fly from where I am to the East Coast, and that always entails a layover in the middle. So typically, I have like an hour flight and then a 3 or 4 hour flight, and that's my travel for one leg. And I've kind of gotten in the habit now of for that 1 hour flight, I just don't do anything. I just kind of sit there, and people I think
Let your
kind of
mind wander.
people look at me a little weird, because everyone's pulling out their iPad or their book, maybe if they're losers, or like their phones or whatever, and they're all twiddling around with a thing, and I'm just kind of sitting there, just kind of
Yeah.
looking around, but it really is a good time to just kind of think, look out the window a little bit if I'm in a window seat, and it's just a little bit peaceful.
And
And then,
how weird is it? We're in a society that would look at you. What's some guy doing?
what are
Being
you doing?
suspicious of your behavior, and you're just like, I'm flying through the air. Is that not enough?
Yeah, right.
Like,
Yeah.
modern marvel all around us. And
I've got one final question for you today on your fatherhood experience. Just I guess broadly, through the process of giving birth to a child, you spent a lot of time in the hospital and with doctors and appointments, and I wanted to get your thoughts on the medical industry. I don't know if it's the same for you as it is for me, but I have not really had to deal with the industry really at all in my life. I mean, I've had some checkups and stuff, but I've never had major surgery or broken a bone, or I don't have to deal with that stuff right now. And so I'm a little out of touch as to what the lived experience of a patient in the medical world is. And you just spent a lot of time in that industry. So I wanted to get your thoughts. Like, is it good? Is it effective? Is it efficient? Did you feel cared for? What do you think about the whole process?
well, I need to recap something really fast in
Okay.
broad strokes, and that is that Danielle had some pain. Well, she was in labor for 32 hours, then pushed for 2 hours, and then had a C-section. Not an emergency C-section. I don't think it qualifies, but it was a we have to do this. And then afterwards, she had acute pain in her below her right ribs, and that pain was enough. She has high tolerance, so the fact she's even complaining about it. We went twice to the OB, who said that's perfectly normal. This happens. This happens. They listened. They weren't dismissive of like, oh, shut up. It wasn't like that. It was like they listened to everything she said, and then they gave reasons like, oh, well, the nurse during the C-section has the push around there. Maybe it dislocated a rib, but everything else, all indications are you're fine. And then she ends up like 2 weeks out. Her heart rate spiked. You know all this. I'm just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
quickly. Is that we had to call an ambulance. Went to the ER, which turned into a hospital stay. That's turned in. She actually at one point her heart rate dropped out. It was a little bit of a mystery. Her heart's just going nuts. Went to the ICU. I mean, when the crash cart team comes in and the chaplain's there, you're just like, what the heck? This is wild. Then moved us from hospital to like a big hospital to another major one with a bigger team just in case kind of thing. And so we were there for that whole process took an entire week, and I saw dozens of nurses and doctors, and there was the heart doctors, there was the general doctor for all of it, there was infectious disease doctors. That's what it turned out to be, was basically long story short, an infection, and
Yeah.
gave her almost like a basic antibiotic, and so that was a nightmare.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare in which it's hard to it's hard to pin down like how close to death was she. Like, that's strange to say, but like there were like just moments and sustained in the 170s, and it was just kept getting worse, and it was weird, and I end up like, I don't want to oversimplify, but in some ways, without recapping all the stories, like I would just ask some questions, like, why are we thinking it's her heart? Like, what if it's like, clearly this has to be related to the C-section. And they kind of acted like, oh, wow. I don't know. Like, they came back and were like, yeah, we think you're right. And I'm like, well, why is that? Why am I doing
you're
this?
An English teacher. Like,
with such a bad sense of science that we have a podcast that Daniel does science to expose how dumb I am with science. Like, this is like basic detective work. And so, and the weird thing is, I don't think, okay, this will get directly to your question. I don't think it was individual incompetence, although, side note, all the nurses were like 22 to, they were either like 65 years old or like 22. And it's noticeable when you're like, I feel much older than these nurses. That's odd, because I've never felt like I'm older than people in an actual profession. Not like, at Starbucks or something, but like you walk into somewhere and you're like, they're nurses. Like, in my mind, like, a nurse is not younger than me and will never be younger than me. So like, it was like slapping me in the face. It was like, you're like a student, like you're a kid. So they were, and they ranged from awesome and attentive to I'm following the notes and there's nothing else I can do. The doctors, it was, what is that saying about an architect, or if you have a hammer, everything's a nail. You're not gonna help me here.
I'm good at these colloquialisms.
But the point is that, like,
a spoonful of laughter is a doctor a day.
Yes, away, apples. They all, like, the heart doctor said she has heart problems, and the system was so big. This hospital system and the legalese is so thick, or the paperwork and the if this then this, that I feel Danielle's case, like, why the heck did I have to connect the dots? Why are they coming? It's like these different doctors coming in and saying, or there was this medication she was on, and her heart rate would keep it at around 90 instead of 170, 180. And I had to watch them. There's some direction, or clearly the doctors had left this as a directive, that if it gets in the 90s or anywhere below that for any amount of time, then you start to wean her off the meds. That makes a lot of sense to me. I get it. But I watched over the course of a week this happen 9-10 times. They'd start to wean her off and it would shoot back up, and to eventually, and then they would have a new shift come on. And I just said, like, this happens every time. We're not gonna, like, I need to talk to a doctor because this is ridiculous. Do not touch this medication. I had to stand in between a nurse. She was like, this was an unusually, like, young and quiet nurse who was not, she was like, okay. She would just say yes, and then she would go to change it anyway. Like, she would just weirdly, and that's patronizing. Like, that's weird to me. She's like, but the notes. And I'm like, yes, with all due respect, I don't, you're not touching this. And I want to see a doctor. And I also said, like, I can't just say, I want to see a doctor now, and a doctor appears, but I said I want an update every 15 minutes for what, like, that you have actively sought out the doctor. So I can understand it's going to take a little while. But I had that adrenaline rush where I'm saying it calmly, but I'm probably a little wild-eyed, And this, you want to talk about lack of sleep? That was the most exhausting experience of my life, and Danielle's the one who went through it. So really strange. So and then, by the way, the doctor says, "Oh yeah, you're right. Like we should just not touch it. We agree with you." It's like, why am I? What? Like, oh
you
my
should
gosh!
Be a doctor. You should. Should get your PhD, your PhMD.
My PhMD.
Yeah.
But
I've actually just briefly on that topic, I've wondered about that. Like, I actually use the phrase medical industry, and that sounds so cold and mechanical and unintuitive, and working from procedure lists and medical coding, and it sounds all like prescribed instead of intuitive, instead of like a
Yes.
person looking at all the data and information like a detective, like you said, and connecting the dots and figuring out what the best course of action is. It doesn't seem like, and again, I'm not involved with doctors and stuff really right now, and it doesn't seem like that happens as often.
So I have a personal philosophy, and that is if my decision is being fueled primarily by fear, I should not make that decision. Like fuel should not be the driving force, or fear should not be the driving force behind the decisions I make.
There's
I
nothing
think
to fuel but fear.
there's nothing to drive but fuel itself.
There's nothing. Yeah, that's it.
But so I say that, and then I think the medical industry practices defensive medicine. I think America. This is
Yeah.
when I was reading a bunch about pregnancy and giving birth and stuff. We are like the number one developed country in the world in terms of having C-sections, and we have way too many C-sections. And the question is why? And it's like they just there's many factors at play. Some might be even just convenience. It's easy for a doctor. It's actually easier for a doctor to say, "Let's do a C-section," because
Oh, say can
it's
you
controlled
see?
circumstances. Oh, say can you
That's
see?
part of our national anthem.
So when there's any degree of risk, they're like, let's just do a C-section.
Yeah.
And that way we won't be sued and we can say we followed a protocol. And so I think that I can't help but ignore, or I won't ignore the idea that like I think are practicing intensely defensive medicine, and by meaning we're sticking to that industry standard of like do this instead of intuition and saying I see the patient. It's more how do I not get sued and
Yeah.
keep our rates down and things like that.
That actually makes some sense. Like, I mean, not to reopen the COVID topic that we beat to death, 2 years ago, but that mentality of being extraordinarily defensive medically makes some amount of sense, right? Like, we know that
Yeah.
the masks don't work, and we know that the vaccine isn't going to help that much, but do it anyway, everyone without exception. And that's kind of what, happened.
And then you can say if people don't do it, well, you can't sue us. We told you to do X, Y, and Z, and you didn't. So if you create more steps and things, then so anyway, I can't help but think that like that was the issue with Danielle, and it wasn't that's when I saw like failures in the systems, not the doctors themselves. If the doctor is
Yeah.
like, look, you're a heart doctor, you better. I believe that they're encouraged in their professions to not step outside of their lane. You better respect the process. This is your role in the system. You're a heart doctor, so you better.
Right.
When we call you in, you look for heart issues. In fact, when I was asking, every time this annoyed Danielle, imagine we're exhausted, and every time I wanted to explain the whole story to every doctor,
Yeah.
because I just believed in the power of the narrative and
Yeah,
that they
yeah,
could make
yeah.
a best decision in doing so. So I'm like and I'm a teacher who gets used to teaching the same class over and over, so I can tell that story with enthusiasm every time. She's like, "Oh my God, this is the fourth time I've heard this," kind of thing. And but they would often just say, "Well, that's not my degree of specialty, so I can't weigh in here." And then
Lame.
they obviously are trained.
Lame.
They should understand. Every doctor, I assume,
Yeah, they all go to med school. Like, they all
Yes.
know the basics. Like,
Yes.
figure it out, dude.
Yeah,
Like,
you should all
Steven,
have a
I
very
would
healthy
be.
understanding of the
Steven
basics.
is a
Yeah.
pathologist, but I
Yes.
would still expect him to be able to, like, use his brain and think about things. And yeah, he might be able to say, like, oh, I haven't looked at this in a long time, or this isn't my specialty area. But he still should, like, be able to think about these things.
Yes.
Like,
And
he should be able to do that.
Some of them would speculate with me, and some would not, and that actually gets into the sense of like the individual. How much do they care? How busy are they? How inundated are they? Because I think what happens is the bigger the system gets, and they want efficiency. And efficiency is defined in poor ways. Instead of just like look
Right.
at Danielle and get the human being better, it's you need to see 25 patients a day or whatever, like if you're specialized and you're a heart doctor and you need to go see your 25 patients and you need to go approve or whatever, or look at this lab work or this or that or the other, and like we need to make sure it's a quantity thing, and like the more you're emphasizing quantity, the less or the more you're compromising on quality. And so yeah, that was my holistic takeaway. And I don't think this was like a my area problem, like my city or this hospital.
Yeah.
This hospital sucks. I think I was
They're very
witnessing,
representative,
like, just I really think I was just like, this is a problem. Not even in like American hospitals. I would just think massive systems that practice defensive. I'll say defensive, like execution of whatever it is, like whatever your business is, like. That's a problem. Yeah.
What about, I know we're going a little long here, but let me just ask on the same topic. What about like technologically, did you notice, were you impressed by like, I don't know, the beds or the rooms or the food or the little clipboards? They have like fancy clipboards or something. And then, so technologically, what was your impression? And then like, I guess, I'm not going to ask about financials, but like the kind of behind the scene, like you had to go on an ambulance and to ICU and all of these things, and I'm sure they didn't come up to you and say, okay, now Daniel, this is going to cost this and this and this, and like that's not how it works. It's all mysterious, and so what was that lived experience? What's your lived experience of that, and like what do you think about all of that, and has it even completed? Is it even over?
Well, I want to address those two. Let's do the financial and then
Okay.
the tech stuff. The financial, I was actually panicking initially, privately. It's like, first of all, like, let's take care of her, but
Sure.
also like if or when she gets through this, like, is our life ruined financially? And so I was actually documenting. Actually asked for someone to come in and say, I want it documented that these are that her issues are the result of us going in twice to say she needs medical treatment, and they did not listen aptly. And so like, I want this documented early, and I want to say it frequently. And part of that narrative, I would say, when I'm telling Danielle's story while she's tired and I'm saying what happened, I told that part of the story of like, and I believe, or it seems obvious that we are here because she was not treated properly initially. And so that in kind of the hopes of like, I don't want to be ruined financially because of y'all's inability to listen and address. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for
Right.
you know, that. And then my dad helped me understand, you know, and I knew this somewhere in the back of my mind, but you meet a deductible once you've met your max out of pocket, which is going to be like, depending on your it could be anywhere from like $3 to $10,000.
Sure.
But like, okay, that's not life ruining though. Like, okay, we're definitely going to meet whatever it is. And that's like, that's a sigh of relief. So in that sense, insurance, well, that's a whole nother thing. But like, okay, for me within this system, and I don't even know what her max out of pocket, but like, we're not going to be, let's say it's 10, then like we'll survive. And then we got the bill recently, and it was $191,000. So
Holy crap! That's kind of what I was. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Like, should all the services and care that you received, should that value? Do you think you got $191,000 worth of value? That's kind of what I'm getting at. Because to me, that sounds absurd, right? Like that's like many Hawaiian vacations, like just constantly
years
just flying
of
back and forth.
like,
Right. And like, if you told me all the things that that you and Danielle and Cosmo had to pay for and get, and you had the hospital room for this number of days and all this amount of time, and you asked me to come up with the value of that, I would say that's probably about $5,500. Like that's about what it's like. That's how much it should cost for all of that stuff. And I'm sure that like any doctors or medical people are just laughing at that number, but that seems like the value of all of that stuff to me. And the fact that that's not the value. Obviously, my estimation can be wrong, but it's definitely
let's say it's 10
not
times
100.
wrong.
Yeah, it's not $191,000. The fact that is valued at $191,000 says the system is wrong.
Yes.
This is bad. This is a not functioning. Well, it's functioning, but it's an
we can disagree on the degree
system.
of how bad, but or how inappropriate it is. But
Yes.
it is absolutely inappropriate. And like, I don't know. Cause you can get into like, well, they had to get degree. It's like when an artist
doesn't
creates
matter.
something,
Doesn't
how
matter.
much is it worth? And their expertise that they're bringing to the table. But like, I bring my expertise to the classroom. How much is this grammar lesson worth? Like, it gets really like, what? I don't know because
I understand and agree with letting the market decide, right? And I understand also that it's complicated with medical pricing because a lot of people end of life care, you'll pay anything to stay alive, like you'll deplete
yeah.
all of your savings and spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to, stay alive another year on expensive experimental surgeries or medications or whatever. So I understand that is an interesting economic twist to valuation of medical services. But this was not end of life care. This was pretty routine. I mean, yeah, she had the weird pain and infection, but even that wasn't that weird, right?
Yeah, nothing was mind blowing in terms of the services she received. Like,
Right,
it really wasn't.
yeah,
There was a little bit
right.
of mystery around solving the case, according to them, but
Yeah.
the meds weren't particularly unique. They drained her at one point. They put a little hole basically, and so, but like, this was like outpatient procedure stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, so no. I tend to agree that about $5,000
I mean,
worth of because there was a lot of nurses and a lot of personal. That's actually the primary expense would be
but-
just the human beings.
But the thing
in
is,
room.
like, you can go to a fancy restaurant and eat. I'll make a food analogy, the best kind of analogies. Say you go to a really nice steakhouse for dinner. Like, think of all the people involved in getting that steak to your plate in front of you. Like, it's your waiter or waitress. You got the chef back there. All the people on the staff at the restaurant. You got the people who made the grill, made and manufactured the grill. You got the farmer that raised the cow. Like, probably 100 to 200 people were involved in getting that steak to your plate, and
Right.
like
So you could argue that it's worth $3,000.
In the hospital world, you would have steak insurance and like government regulations on steak safety and stuff.
Right.
And for that steak dinner,
FDA.
if I told you that steak dinner cost $79,000, then that would be the same level of confusion that I would have. Like, what? Like, $191,000 to like have a baby and $72,000 to
that's
have a
not
steak
including
dinner.
that. There was 191 was the week in the hospital.
Oh,
the other
well,
was about
what?
It's completely different. I think that was like 20 or something.
Oh my god, come on! Like, that's totally absurd. That's totally ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah.
End hospitals. End hospitals. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
But like,
Well, but like there needs to be a revamping of how like, especially pricing. I mean, it's really the pricing and well, I thought to myself too. Here's the interesting thing: is like, okay, would this have been better in a small town? Maybe in this particular case, it would have been a lot more.
personal.
I believe it would be like personal and looking at Danielle. But like, if she had to have some crazy heart surgery, I want her like with a
obviously,
big crazy
sure.
team and all the
Specialists,
technological
right.
wizardry that they can perform. Like, so there's the give and take of that. But yeah, I was not impressed. Oh, so the tech of the rooms even. So the only thing I'll say that was interesting was the bed, which was very uncomfortable to her and looked uncomfortable. Which is like, come on, it's a bed. Get the bed right. It's kind of like these phones with all their
purple
gadgets.
mattress or
Like-
whattever, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like
How many ways
phones that
stretch
drop
were the
calls,
sheets?
Like,
were they bamboo?
oh
bamboo
no,
sheets?
they were absolute cardboard sheets, like all like unbelievable stuff. But the bed had an interesting function where it had like lights projected downwards, so you could tell if it was locked in place or if it had reached its maximum height or lower. So I had like 3 different lights that would change color depending on if it would be like red if it was, or green if it was ready to move. It's just, that's a very dumb little thing to. But
I bet the
just
bed
remember
cost
that,
like
so.
$170,000.
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me, honestly, with that sort of like, it seems thick and like it just seemed like it was, I'm sure the prices are absurd in there. But I will say too that everything, like, this might be a mark. The bigger hospital that they brought us to is a little bit of an older hospital. So imagine like an LCD flat screen like of Michael Scott variety in that episode of The Office where he's standing the home dinner
The neon light thing.
No. Like his TV that he was so proud of, when he had with Jan and he bought his own TV. Do you remember
Oh,
this?
yeah,
He was
yeah,
just
hanging
so-
on the wall, the little tiny
yeah,
one.
and he said,
Yeah, okay,
yes, the
gotcha.
little tiny one that's thick and like it's
yeah.
funny now because watching it's a dated show or whatever,
Yes,
but it was
yeah.
funny at the time how terrible it was. That's the kind of TV they had, and it was probably of the same like time period, and like the screens and all they were clunky. Things were older. I felt like I was looking at like stuff around the early 2000s, and except for those the lights, little gizmo.
I mean, it's probably because the prices are so exorbitant for medical stuff and inflated that they stick with old. The old stuff works. If it ain't broke,
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
Something.
Don't glitch it.
Don't,
You know.
Yeah. And so, because if they were just paying for a regular old TV in Walmart, then yeah, they could get it for real cheap. But it's not a regular old TV in Walmart. It's a medical diagnostic
And actually,
display device, and so it costs $7,000 for the
but
little
I'm talking
12-inch
about the
thing.
I'm talking about the TV that she could watch for pleasure, like.
Oh,
the
but
one they have. But
that's a medical inpatient entertainment display.
Yeah, yeah.
And so,
it also is connected to the big. She has a nurse call button, but
there
also
we go.
a
That's
volume
it.
up and down,
The-
and channel up and down.
Right,
like,
the
things for
nurse, the technological interface probably costs $2,300 to you just be a USB cable or something.
Also, when you'd press the nurse button, like because it would call this panel at the front desk, which were probably not nurses, they're just like basically receptionists, and it was very fast food, like where like some would be like, you go to some fast foods like Chick-fil-A, and they're like, "How are you? May I take your order?" And then sometimes it's just like, like, and that's how it was paging a nurse.
I bet like I bet this is impossible because of government regulation, but I bet it would be possible to just make a hospital without all the BS. Like you could just in kind of in the same way.
The Chick-fil-A of hospitals, like a great hospital.
Well, no, that's not.
Yeah.
That's not what I was saying. I was saying more like, you know how if you don't tell them that you're having a wedding, but you cater some food and you rent a space. Like you went through this kind of thing, right? All the wedding stuff is so marked up outrageously because there's
Don't call the cake a wedding cake,
Right.
or it's going to go up 800%.
exactly that kind of thing. But if instead I didn't tell everyone I was building a hospital, but I built a hospital and I made the nurse call button, and you could do that for $45 with Arduinos and some stuff you get on Amazon, and it's perfectly fine. And then you set the prices and don't deal with insurance. I bet you could make a profitable hospital that actually gives better care for a better price point.
It's funny.
But
I bet
it's
you're
impossible
right.
because of it would be totally illegal, I'm sure.
Yes, but like you walk into the bathroom, like we did have an individualized bathroom, which is nice. But like, so you have these fall bars or safety rail type things, and then like a cord that if you pulled it, it would call the nurse. I bet you that like you could install a bar that's really cheap and just as solid, but you have to order from some medical grade whatever, and have some professional installation that those sorts of prices that you're talking about. Like this is literally just a metal bar on a wall, but because of its being manufactured for these purposes and having to be in probably investigated and not investigated, but like have someone come in and approve it, that is when the stuff just gets outrageous. Oh, and everything they would give you, they brought us a fan, and then when we went to leave the first hospital, they're like, just take the fan with you. We can't use that again in anyone else's room. And I thought that was odd too. I said, anything we give you, even if it's still packaged and whatever, like we cannot reuse for new patients.
You're talking about like
this
a electric fan that you plug
I'm talking
in?
about a small fan where it was hot and the airflow was not good in the room. I said, "Can we get a fan?" And they acted like they were like, we'll see what we can do. And they bring in just a plastic,
Like a box
3
fan?
settings. One can rotate,
that kind of
like
fan.
not even but it was one that rotates, but not on a stand even, just like a little one with a clip, that you could put on the sidebar of the it's probably about in diameter 7 or 7 inches.
Okay. So probably like
tiny
a
fan.
$1,500 fan.
like something that on Amazon, I'd be surprised if it would be about $9.99.
Yeah, right,
really,
right.
or if that, you could probably find your $3.99 version, but you're like, I think I'll pay the $7 one. Like that's how I would make my decision
Right.
looking at it. And so, yeah, that fan we just took with us, so the amount of tubing. That was one thought I had is like every time they would she had 4 IVs in her arm at one point, like just nuts, like all the and like the tubing that they would reuse and redo and whatever. I was just like, I wonder how many feet of tubing like she's gone through, or how many laps around the world it could make at this one hospital if you were to take all the tubing, and because they can never reuse it. And I understand that, but I'm just like,
where does it all go? Where does it end up?
Just the industry of like, hey, I do tubing for this one hospital, and I'm a billionaire, you know, like I don't know, because it just, yeah. It just reminded me of like you think about like I think governments with all the orange cones for road work, like they rent those barrels out, and they rent them, like let's say they rent them $5 a month, but they're doing a construction project, so they're like, we'll take 3,000 barrels, and you're like, got it. And then they're so beat up, and you've had barrels from 1997 out there, you know, and it's just like you're doing contracts with the government. I'm sure it's all the same with hospitals, as you have these, like that's the industry problem. I don't know. Anyway, gosh, yeah.
That's all.
Cosmo.
That's all I was going to ask you. I know. I'm sorry we went a little longer than I wanted to, but I cleared my afternoon for our podcast today, so I'm not worried about time. Cosmo's still sleeping like a baby.
He's cried a few times. I'm wondering if the mic picked up.
I didn't hear it,
but like I heard Danielle changing him. So at least once I heard. He wasn't wailing, but he was just mildly crying. So I'm wondering. Yeah, that's good to know that the mild cry probably did not pick up. It was early on too. Yeah. So.
All right, that was fun. Congrats on the end of the school year, I guess.
Thanks, man.
The end.
Bye.